motion to?
Motion to reconvene. Second.
We have a motion to reconvene in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Before we get started tonight, I would just like to have a moment of silence. We've had our Vice President of our council, Tom Welch, his dad passed yesterday. And Mr. Welch was, he was on the planning board from 1970 to 1973 as the chairman. And he was also a member of the planning board. He got back on from 84 to 86. So he did some public service for us, longtime resident. Started out in the 5th Ward in Newport, discovered how beautiful Middletown was, and decided to make that leap. And the Welch family's been with us for a long time. And so I'd just like to honor him with a moment of silence. Okay. Thoughts and prayers go out to the Welch family. Okay. Okay. So we have a swearing-in ceremony of Fire Chief James Peplau.
Motion to begin said swearing-in ceremony. Excuse me. Second.
Motion is second to begin ceremony. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Chief Partridge.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the council. And thank you to everyone who's joined us this evening to swear in the new fire chief for the Middletown Fire Department, Chief James Peplau. I'd like to thank the members of the department for attending, visiting chiefs from the neighboring communities as well, department heads, and guests. Thank you for joining us. At this time, I'd like to ask the Middletown Fire Department Honor Guard to present the colors. If you would, please stand. Please be seated. Thank you to the Honor Guard for being here this evening, presenting the colors. As President Rodriguez mentioned, my name is Kevin Partridge. I have been the interim fire chief here in Middletown for the last 2 months. I thank the council and Sean for that opportunity, and I want to pass along to you that you have an awesome fire department, dedicated members who do a great job each and every day. I want to thank them and this time, I would like to ask the Council President, who has a few words.
Sure. Thank you, Chief Partridge. I'd like to just make some comments. I always want to make some brief comments, but as I sat down this afternoon and started writing this, it got longer and longer, so just bear with me. I'll try to make it quick. So the town of Middletown Town Council, the town administrator, and all the town department heads, on behalf of all the residents of this great town of Middletown, welcome with open arms newly appointed Fire Chief James Peplau. The Middletown Fire Department has a long established and maintained record of excellence in serving its residents as well as its visitors. Chief Peplau brings a wealth of experience that will enhance the development of the members of this young and dedicated department. Chief Peplau was an active member of the Waterbury, Connecticut Fire Department for 27 years, from September 1994 to July 2021. Chief Peplau has held various leadership positions for the past 22 years. He was a lieutenant for 2.5 years. He was a captain for 9.5 years, and he was a battalion chief for the past 10 years. Previous to his 27-year career with the Waterbury, Connecticut Fire Department, Chief Peplau was a paramedic assistant supervisor with the New Britain EMS in New Britain, Connecticut for 8.5 years. Chief Peplau was also a firefighter / paramedic with the East Hartford, Connecticut Fire Department for 1 year before joining the Waterbury Fire Department. Chief Peplau graduated with honors in 2008 from Boston University with a Master's of Business Administration. Chief Peplau also holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial and Management Engineering, graduating from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in 1991 in Troy, New York. Chief Peplau also achieved various Emergency Management Institute certifications and National Fire Academy certifications. Some of his areas of expertise are: he's accomplished grant administrator with a strong record of improving preparedness and response through training, evaluation, technology, and best practices. He's a collaborative leader with strong team building skills driven by desire to help others and the opportunity for personal and professional development. He's a dedicated public servant with expertise in career and volunteer fire and emergency medical services and emergency management. His extensive experience in using critical thought and analysis to develop and implement innovative solutions. He's able to remain detailed-oriented and effectively solve problems in a fast-paced, high-pressure environment. His excellent communication skills and his strong ability to develop and deliver presentations to audiences. So with that, Chief, welcome to Middletown. We are glad to have you. It's been a long search, but we think we got the man we were looking for. We have a young department, and we're looking for that person to develop those young firefighters to the next level. So welcome to Middletown, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to ask Town Administrator Brown for a few words.
Very quickly, I'd like to thank a number of people that have come tonight to celebrate with the chief the swearing in this evening, and thank them for making the trip in many cases. Tonight, we're joined by the chief's daughter, Lauren, his son, John. We also have some of his co-workers here from Waterbury, the director of training, Steve Narika, and his family. Retired Waterbury Battalion Chief Mike Bergen and his wife. And we're also joined by a number of distinguished chiefs from the area, which I'm very glad came this evening. We have Chief Ford from Portsmouth, Chief Petrin from Little Compton, Chief Partington from Narragansett, who also is the president of the Rhode Island Fire Chiefs Association, and Chief Reimless from Tiverton. So I'd like to thank them for making the trip and joining the council this evening. I'd especially like to thank the council president for taking notes this afternoon, because I didn't, so I'm just going to be very quick. I think in the time I've been with the town for the past 21 years, this may be one of the most important appointments that we've made. Just a little bit of history, I think for all of us that have grown up here, we've all had a great respect for the Middletown Fire Department and the chiefs that we've had over time. The Middletown Fire Department is more than, I think as many of us grew up, the siren that would go off at noontime and at the end of the day, which meant you needed to get home. But it was a call that you could make and you got help. And I think that's how we all grew up in the town of Middletown. I have been fortunate to work with Teresa and Paul, Barbara, Dennis, and now Chris and Terry. Some longer than others, but in the last 21 years, we've done really, I would say, a remarkable job in developing the Middletown Fire Department, which I think makes the chief's appointment and swearing in tonight even more important and for the town. We started out, when I got here, modernizing the equipment in the department. Not only an expensive task, but a task that required planning by the chiefs, training, and the firefighters learning how to use those tools effectively. The next thing that we accomplished was building a new fire station. And it's a great station. It's a station that the community overwhelmingly supported, and it's a station that will serve the community going into the future. And then most recently, and I will say working with, the firefighters, the union, in a collaborative and sometimes maybe a little aggressive collaborative manner, we were able to do two things. One, we were able to increase the staffing at the fire department. But the second part is, and it's something that's taken place just this past July, is we have greatly changed the way in which we respond and provide services to residents in the town of Middletown. And if you think of just those three things getting done over a 20-year period, it's really remarkable. And it's not all money. A lot of it is leadership of the chiefs that have come before Chief Peplau. And a lot of it comes from the employees that serve in the command positions and the firefighters that show up to work every day and really do an outstanding job. So I wanted to give everybody that sort of background tonight. It's something that I'm very proud of. And I think as we swear in the chief, I think I just want him to understand, the level of expectation we have of him, that we do have, the challenges to work with our current employees to modernize our department and integrate those things, the equipment, the station, the facility, but then the training and the response that we provide the community. It's a huge change in a short period of time, and I am very confident that Chief Peplau is the leader that we're looking for to bring us to that next level of public safety within the town of Middletown. So with that, I'm going to turn over the podium to Chief Partridge, and we'll quickly get the chief sworn in. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. If I could ask Chief Peplau and the town clerk, Wendy Marshall, to come forward. So the symbolism in the fire department of the speaking trumpet for fire officers. The bugle or speaking trumpet has a unique place in the American fire service. In this country, the speaking trumpet was used by early fire officers to project their orders over the noise and commotion of an emergency scene. Fire officers were readily recognized as they wore the speaking trumpet on a lanyard around their neck. Today's rank insignia on that symbolism. One of the many traditions passed from the generation to generation, along with principles of duty, honor, and courage. In Middletown Fire Department, one silver bugle represents a lieutenant, 2 represent a captain, 2 cross gold bugles symbolize a battalion chief, and 5 cross bugles symbolize the rank of fire chief. At this time, I'd ask the town clerk, Wendy, to swear in the new chief.
Please raise your right hand. Do you, James Peplau, make solemn oath to be true and faithful unto the state, to support the Constitution and laws thereof, and the Constitution of the United States, and to well and truly execute the office of fire chief for the Middletown Fire Department for the ensuing year, until another be engaged in your place, until you are legally discharged therefrom?
I do.
Congratulations.
All right. All right.
Congratulations, sir.
At this time, I would ask Chief Peplau's daughter and son to step forward, who will pin the chief's badge on his uniform. At this time, if I could ask Chief Peplau for a few remarks.
This is a great evening for me, a momentous one, in fact. And for the Middletown Fire Department is a critical step we are taking together towards realizing our full potential to meet the needs of the community. From the earliest days of my 28-year fire career, I've been devoted to improving myself, my department, and the community we serve. Far more than just another iteration of that, this is a realization of a goal, a dream, to be the fire chief in a progressive department in a town with a strong sense of community that I can contribute to. I'm so very grateful that I have found both here in Middletown. The Middletown Fire Department enjoys the support of the community, and as a result of that and good governance, has added staff, is well equipped, and will soon be purchasing new apparatus. There's much to be done to bring these elements together into a common vision, a smoothly running organization delivering at the highest level. But I place great confidence in the enthusiasm of the new firefighters and in the devotion and experience of the veteran firefighters, their officers, and the dispatchers who have gotten the department to this day. I'm excited by the positive energy in the department and within our partnering agencies in public safety, healthcare, and the town services. Several representatives of these agencies are here tonight, and I greatly appreciate that they have joined us on this very happy occasion. In public service, I have encountered unexpected challenges of many types, and I've also met many of the best people I know. I am honored that 3 colleagues from Waterbury have joined me. Director of Training Steve Norica, retired Battalion Chief Mike Bergen, and Lieutenant Jamie Musmano are here this evening. We've known each other for 27 years and built each other's kids' bikes at the station between calls, celebrated victories, and leaned on each other through life's trials. I know I'll find many more like them here in Middletown. Having my children here tonight has been extremely gratifying for me. Lauren and John are the most important people in my life and make me proud each day. I'm so very blessed to be their father. I thought I was pretty driven as a young firefighter, but when the nurse handed Lauren to me, there was a whole new intensity to be the very best person I could. I so want to make them proud of me each and every day. I want to thank the town council and town administrator Sean Brown for the honor of being selected chief. I've been continually impressed by your dedication to the community, and I so look forward to working with each of you. Lastly, this evening and the success of my transition were greatly facilitated by interim chief Kevin Partridge. I've known Kevin for over 10 years, and he's always been a go-to guy during that period. I appreciate all he's done for me and for Middletown, and I know he'll continue to be a valuable resource.
Thank you very much, Chief. My very best to you and every success to you as the chief. I know you have some great leaders on the Middletown Fire Department, great battalion chiefs, captains, lieutenants, super force of firefighters. I know they'll do you well. Thank you to the council and to Sean for allowing us this opportunity to do the swearing in this evening. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. I would just like to make a couple of brief closing comments, if I could. And I would like to come down there. So I'd like to take a moment to thank Interim Fire Chief Kevin Partridge, who stepped up and stepped into the Interim Fire Chief as our Interim Fire Chief. Chief Partridge, at a moment's notice, you did not hesitate to step up. And your dedication and leadership to our town and the fire service industry is inspiring, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. You're a true leader, and you ought to be committed to that, and we appreciate you. Thank you. Hey, Rob. Come on up for a minute, please. Sorry. Sorry to put you on the spot, bud. You can come right up.
Come on.
I would also like to especially thank Interim Chief Robert McCall. You also stepped up for almost 2 years and served as interim chief as we were searching for a fire chief. You know, your dedication to this town, its residents and the visitors and your peers. Your service, professionalism, and leadership are exemplary. These attributes stood tall during some difficult times between the council and fire department. And you, sir, are a true leader, and we recognize you for that, and thank you for the vote of our hearts as well.
I'm going to ask the honor guard if they would retire the colors, and that concludes our swearing in. Thank you again very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your service. Thank you, and well done.
Okay. Thank you guys for coming this evening. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Really? Which one's in?
Okay. Let's move on to number 3, public forum. Number 3 is pursuant to Rule 25 of the Rules of the Council, citizens may address the town council on one subject only, said subject of substantive town business, neither discussed during the regular meeting nor related to personnel or job performance. Citizens may speak for no longer than 5 minutes and must submit a public participation form to the council clerk prior to the start of the meeting. All items discussed during the session will not be voted upon, and we do have one. We do have Dan Titus. So Dan, if you want to come up and state your name and address to the record, please.
Daniel Titus. Thank you, Paul.
Welcome, Dan. Thank you.
Age slips up on you.
It sure does.
Very briefly, and I sent this to Wendy earlier, so you may have received it. It really has to do with the disbanding of the Public Task Force on Short-Term Rentals. I feel like there isn't closure in this. Councilor Von Villis, I thank you for all you've done. I think it's great, and I think we're in a good path. But I feel like we don't know the reasons why. It hasn't been transparent, and not as a task force member, but as a citizen, I think it sets a really bad precedent for transparency. Why did this happen? Why did the council choose to take this and pull this back from the task force? What were the reasons? Now, personally, I think it's a political hot potato, and I thank you. But I do actually think, you know, getting these different stake owners involved was a great thing, and it's a tough thing, and people are gonna argue about this, and they're gonna disagree about this, and that's fine. You know, we don't have to agree. We don't even have to agree to disagree. We just have to be able to sit down and have this conversation. And it's a tough conversation, and people feel passionate about their side, as we all know from past council meetings. So I would just, you know, ask that, you know, you let us know what happened. I'm not asking you to reconstitute it, although it'd be nice if you did. And if there was a particular reason, let's deal with this reason. One of the emails I received from Councilor Von Villas, it actually stated that it was a good start for the task force, and I discovered I have a lot to learn. That was from Councilor Von Villas. We all have a lot to learn. Having Evan tell us about the percentage of people that actually rent, and we didn't really get down to the meat of what is the economic impact, if any. What's the social impact, which is great. I'm sure we all know that, especially those people who have lived next to problem houses. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to definitely keep it
Okay.
5 minutes.
Okay.
Just please let us know, because I actually feel like I've been bamboozled. I've been asked to do something. I stood up, I put my name in, you appointed me. We had one meeting, and I thought it was a great meeting. And then we waited, and we waited, and we still didn't really hear anything. And it kind of let me down.
Okay.
So I feel bad about that. And I'm sure the other task force members, I don't really talk to them, so I don't know. But I'm sure they feel the same way. So please, think about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it, sir. Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar. Are there any councils like to pull any items?
Number
Council
four.
Flynn?
Number 4.
Number 4? Okay. You have that? Okay. Any other councils like to pull? Okay.
Motion to approve said minutes with the exception of, what did she,
We're going to approve the consent calendar, with the
Okay.
exception of number 4.
with the exception of number 4. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent calendar with the exception of number 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's read it in. Number 4, approval of minutes, reference to regular meeting, June 21st, 2021. Motion to approve said minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Council Flynn.
Thank you. So these are just corrections on the minutes. I sent them out by email today.
Yep.
Under the number 28, Rules of the Council, number 1, there's a word that is written by the solicitor that we discussed in the meeting that was incorrect. Instead of saying minority, it should say majority. That would be the first correction. And then on the number 2 of that same section, the motion is actually missing 2 words. The words published and before the word recorded, and that was important because it was a directive from the solicitor that it had to be published by state law. Just those 2 corrections.
Okay. Wendy, you have those? Okay. You good with that?
Terrific.
Awesome. So just as a note to the public, what happens to a correction like that? Is it just corrected and that's where it lies, or does it come back? It's just corrected? Okay. Okay, excellent. Okay. You have. I knew you would have when I saw the email today. Okay, let's move on to licenses and permits. Number 6, application of Joson Enterprises Incorporated, does business as Domino's Pizza, 19 West Main Road, for a Vitriol House license for the 2020-2021 licensing year. This is new.
Motion to grant said license subject to approvals from the building inspector, official, fire marshal, and board of health. Second.
We have a motion to second to grant said license subject to approval of building official, fire marshal, and board of health. Are there any discussion? Council Flynn.
Quick question, I didn't receive an answer back as to why is this new? Oh, my apologies.
Does she have a mic? Can you get Wendy a microphone, please?
It's a new owner, and they can't transfer you. They have to apply for a new license.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have motion to second to grant said license. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Number 7, application of Joe's Quick Marts LLC, does business as Joe's Quick Marts, 864 West Main Road, for a Vitriol House license for the 2020-2021 licensing year. This is new.
Motion to grant said license subject to approvals from the building official, fire marshal, and board of health. Second.
Motion to second to approve. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, number 8. Application of Joe's Quick Mart LLC DBA Joe's Quick Marts, 864 West Main Road, for a holiday sales license for the 2021-2022 licensing year. This is new.
Motion to grant said license. Second.
We have a motion and a second to grant. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, number 9, application for special event permit from Bike to the Beach Incorporated for Bike to the Beach, New England, to be held on Saturday, September 18th, 2021, beginning at 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., a route through Middletown, Old Mill Lane, Indian Avenue, Hanging Rocks Road, Paradise Avenue, Tuckerman Avenue, Purgatory Road, Crescent Road, and Aquidneck Avenue.
Motion to grant said special event permit. Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. I have a question. I have no issue with it besides, how will this be, will adjustments be made if, say the governor comes out with another state of emergency? Or as the numbers dictate, more aggressive steps like we had previously? How is that gonna work with this? Any idea?
So if the governor was to issue an executive order or a change, then they would be obligated to comply with it.
Okay.
So that would override everything.
And they would be we don't need to make that a stipulation, that just overrides everything?
It would just override.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Just wanna make sure
just-
from a,
I'm familiar with this event. You don't have large groups of bicyclists together. By the time they get to Middletown, they're 86 miles into 100 miles, and
I see more on Wapping Road on a Saturday when I'm out there in my
and that's the
fields.
thing. You'll
Yeah.
see more people on Wapping Road than you'll see
Yeah.
racing down. And they're not going to stop for pizza because at mile 86, you're looking to get to Newport and off the bike as quick
Okay.
as possible. So,
All right. I just wanted to make sure from a safety perspective. So we have a motion to second to grant. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Number 10, application for special event permit from Colin Greenman for a Day for Jamal fundraiser. Basketball and recreational games to be held at Potsy Field on Sunday, August 8th, 2021, from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. The applicant requests all fees to be waived.
Motion to grant said special event permit and waive all fees. Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Good luck to you guys. Okay. Number 11, application for a special event permit for Middletown Prevention Coalition for the Middletown Family Day, National Prevention Movement to celebrate family engagement, to be held at Second Beach on Saturday, October 12th, 2021, from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. The setup is at 10 a.m. in the morning. The rain date is Sunday, October 3rd. The applicant requests all fees to be waived.
Motion to grant said special event permit and waive all fees. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, let's move on to ordinances. Number 12, an ordinance of the Town of Middletown, second reading, an ordinance and amendment of the Town Code of the Town of Middletown, Title 3, Administration, Chapter 34, Taxes, Section 34.02, Exemption on Residential Property.
Motion to adopt said ordinance on its second reading. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance on its second reading. Is there any discussion? The only thing that I would ask is that when we did these exemptions, we did a few the previous meeting. Basically, what we're doing is equalizing them based upon how the assessments went up, right? So again, I think, Dennis, you had brought it up, I think we need to really take a look at, because they're gonna get what they got before, and I think, everything's getting more expensive. We need to look at and maybe up the exemption a little bit so that they're getting more of a break, people that need it, so. Okay? That's something that'll be a separate docket item that I would hope that you would bring soon.
Okay.
Okay, time's up.
I thought
Okay.
you were making a motion.
No. So, we have a motion and a second to adopt said ordinance in the second reading. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Number 13, an ordinance of the Town of Middletown, first reading. An ordinance and amendment to the Town Code of the Town of Middletown, Title 3, Administration, Chapter 36, Fee Schedule, F, Police, 4, Public Safety, Private Detail Billing Rates for the Police Department.
Motion to receive said ordinance on its first reading. Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive discussion. Is Sean,
He stepped out.
okay. So, what's that? Okay, so Mark, you got this one? So okay, thank you, Mark. So, during budget time, one of the questions that came up was was a billing rate for $25 for a police car that's on a detail. When you see a police car out there on a detail, we get $25 an hour for that. That money goes to the rescue wagon, restricted rescue wagon fund, is that what it is?
General fund.
General fund, okay. So one of the things we looked at and thought was, okay, you know, $25 seems, the fee hasn't changed in 10 years. So that's kind of how this has evolved, and it's really taking a look at this fee. And Mark, if you want to proceed with your information, that'd be fantastic. Because I know Council Toronto might want to make a few remarks on this as well.
So this is to remove the wording to build a school at a discounted rate, which hasn't been happening. It's contractual, so you really cannot bill at a lower rate than what they're getting paid. So that has to be removed from the ordinance.
Okay.
It's actually under the Fair Labor Standards Act, you can't pay someone below their overtime rate. It was just a practice that had been in the contract that should have been corrected and has been because we're obligated to pay people in accordance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. So.
Okay. So the other thing, I'll turn it over to Dennis. Dennis called me today and asked to speak on this a little bit. And we both had some of the same concerns, so.
Okay.
Council Toronto?
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, it was during the budget meetings that it had come up. You know, we want to look at the fees. I've talked with the president about this. We seem to come across fees that haven't been changed in a period of time. So we had inquired about the $25 fee for the car. They were showing that we generate revenue from these details, and that could go towards the purchase of cars. So we were like, okay, well, that's good information to have, but I wanted to get more information on the cost of maintenance. I mean, we saw the revenue side, but we didn't see the cost side to it. And we only really saw what charge was for the car, not so much the police. But we did get a lot of detail that you guys sent to me in a number of emails. Is it fair to say that we have the rate has changed for the employee, for the police officer to actually perform the service? Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Because what I received was a report that said it's a certain factor above what they're being charged on an hourly basis. So I didn't know what the hourly rates that they were charging. I just took comfort in the fact that it's the standard rates that we have today. Have they been updated over the last year, 2 years?
Rates are always updated every contract. It's contractual.
Okay, but the rate that we charge them for the car hasn't been changed in a period of time.
Correct.
And it's been quite a while. So, do you know what other towns are paying at this time on an average?
We are looking in, reaching out to other communities to see what they're charging. So we're in the process of that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then, you also sent me the police detail revenue and expenses for 2019 through 2021. And if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like we have a net grand total revenue of $328,000.
I do not have that with me, but there also states that there's an average of the maintenance costs on that, which is not included in the above.
Yeah, you said the entire fleet for gasoline was $69,000 and the repairs was $71,000.
It's really hard to identify per vehicle. We don't keep track of per vehicle costs.
Right, so
Not all vehicles is used on the detail.
okay. So the numbers that I'm seeing here from what you provided me was that the 2021 actual amount for the detail police cruisers and the detail police was $993,000. And then the expense for the private detail was $665,000.
That's the compensation, yeah.
And then, so the revenue, obviously, totals, so it looks like about $328,000 is going to the general fund.
Before the maintenance cost.
Before the maintenance.
Yes.
Okay. So it's, you know, again, we are always looking for ways of increasing revenue. I think the cost of the cars, we buy new cars and we maintain cars and the gas and the maintenance and so on. So I'd be interested in knowing what other communities are charging. And even if they haven't changed, if it's, as Paul said to me, it doesn't mean we can't be the first to, you know, increase that fee, because it seems, especially in business travel, $25 these days for a rental car a week is, you know, or a day is not that, you know, we're talking hundreds of dollars. So something we should look at, I think, you know, not just because it could generate more revenue, but it should make sense. So,
And that's per hour.
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So thanks.
I just thought that the $25 after 10 years, that we certainly need to look at that. I think that's, in my opinion, maybe I'm off base, but in my opinion, that seems like a pretty good bargain. And again, the 600 and some, I just want to be clear, the 600 some thousand dollars of compensation to the police officer, that's paid by the contractor.
Yes. That's part of the revenue offsets. the
Right, I
cost.
just want to make sure that the audience knows that we don't pay that. That's paid, but when you see them out on a detail, that's paid by the contractor, and they're there for the safety of those workers, and, you know, a lot of times you see them, well, why don't they get out of the car? Why don't they do this? And why don't they do that? They're working for that contractor, and I'm sure they're looking at safety too, so I just want to throw
All
that
private
out there.
details are paid by the contractor.
So when, Sean, when are we going to see it, when we get this information back about the fee of the $25?
Oh, try to have something on for the next docket,
Yeah, okay, and if not the meeting after that, I mean, whatever we have on,
within a month. Yeah.
whatever's reasonable time frame for you to get back to us,
Probably
we'd,
the one after that, because that's only a week for the docket to close.
yeah, no problem, no problem. We appreciate it, Mark.
Yeah, and sorry, I meant $25 an hour.
Yeah.
Question?
Yes, Councilor Flynn.
Clarification. So when the contractor's paying the compensation for the officers, that's part of the 900,000, correct? Because they don't get paid directly. The town pays them,
We bill
and we
the-
bill the contractor.
We bill them, that's
I
correct.
just wanted to make that clarification. Also, so this information that you're going to be gathering, is that procedurally something that could be incorporated in this ordinance reading, first and second reading, or is it, we're going to have to go through this particular ordinance again if the fee turns out to need to be adjusted?
I think we would do it again, because this ordinance change was simply to bring it into compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. If the council then wants to adjust the fees, once you get that information, we'd present another amendment.
Do
to
it
the
all over
ordinance.
again?
Okay, that's fine. Mark, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a
Thank you,
question.
Mark.
Sorry, Mrs. Santos.
I'm going to bring it up again. With the police cars, with the police department getting new cars, are there any old police cars that are in the back lot that are not being used? And I'll tell you the reason why.
So right now, I mean, we've ordered cars. I don't know that we'll see a car in the near future. So as far as additional cars that are out there, we don't have any. There's no extra cars right now.
Well, to go along with what Dennis said, to add revenue to the town budget, I'd like to see the police cars that are not being used being rented out and put on streets that are traveled at such a high rate of speed. Have the taxpayers, if they want, they don't have to, but have the taxpayers rent a police car and put it in their driveway. Slow the traffic down before somebody gets killed. Between Turner's Road and my street, Aquidneck Avenue, Paradise, we all got letters, emails from people on these streets. Will generate some revenue for them cars that are not being used. They don't have to have a body inside. Chief Gibson, he put a dummy inside the car with a uniform, and it slowed down the traffic. That didn't take much money, and the taxpayers didn't have to pay for it, but it slowed the traffic down. And everybody in this room knows where the speed people are, and it's the young people. It's not my age. We travel 15, and if somebody wants to go faster behind me, hey, I even slow down to 20, and they don't like it, they give me certain signs. So that's something to think about.
So what I'd offer immediately is that we have 3 trailers with speed feedback signs on them. They have blue and red lights on them to signal when people exceed the speed limit. Besides being effective in slowing down speed, we're able to collect data about the speed that's traveled. If anybody wants one of those placed in their neighborhood, we can do that free of charge. They can simply call my office and they can have a trailer this weekend.
Well, I think the traffic on Morrison will slow down because they have cut the water line around the bend on Morrison Avenue, so I don't think it's going to be used as a cut-through for a while. So, but that's a thought for extra income. And I also would like to, at the next report from, this is directed to you, Mr. Brown, the next report from the police chief and the fire chief, I'd like some data from them regarding tickets, people who've gone to municipal court, how much we've collected from fines, and on the fire department, how many rescue calls, how many fires have been in Middletown. Give us a little bit more information.
So you want a report from the police department, a report from the fire department, and a report from the municipal court clerk?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we give them, not next meeting, but similar to Mark, 2 meetings?
Oh, next month is fine.
Sure.
Thank you.
And just for the record, I've driven with her, she doesn't do 15. So,
Can I?
okay. All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
So we have a motion and a second to receive the said ordinance in its first reading. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Let's move on to other communications. Memorandum of Paul A. Croce, Chairman, Middletown Planning Board, in reference to recommendation of the Town Council regarding acceptance of Lewis Drive subdivision, tax assessors plat 125, lots 947, 948, 949, 950, for town maintenance in accordance with Section 703.5 of the Middletown Rule and Regulation regarding the subdivision and development of land.
Motion to receive said memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive discussion. Is Ron here?
Yes, yes.
Ron, I just want to brief everyone on what's going on here and what they're looking to do.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Ron Wolanski, Town Planner. This is a subdivision that was approved several years ago, which included the extension of a cul-de-sac off of Trout Drive. That work was recently completed, certified complete by the town engineer. And as part of the approval process, any public road that's being created, first off, the planning board would vote, and they have voted, to release the performance bond that was posted to secure the completion of the roadway and the associated improvements. And then the next step, and this is what you have on the docket tonight, is a recommendation from the planning board to the town council that that new roadway be accepted by the town as a public road for public maintenance, town maintenance.
Okay, so back in my public works days, part of, and this always comes to my mind when the town's ready to accept the road, and just bear with me, please, is John Kesson Farm. It happened in phases. Phase 1, Phase 2, and then Phase 3. The guy went bankrupt. There was all kinds of problems. It never got finished. I just want to make sure that, and I'm sure it is, but I just need to ask the question. It meets all the town specifications as far as width, drainage. I'm sure they reviewed all that, correct?
That's right. The planning board did review the design of the roadway, as did the town staff. That was all approved. I guess in terms of securing the town going forward, in releasing the performance bond, as part of that, we also have to hold back a percentage of the original bond for maintenance purposes. So we hold that for a period of 1 year from now for another year, so that should any issues arise, the durability of the roadway surface, for example, if something, pothole were to develop or something, we would have that money available to us to complete that repair. If at the end of the year no new issues arise, that maintenance bond would be also refunded to the developer.
Yeah, because I remember back in the day, there was a previous town administrator, several town administrators ago, he released it, and the road fell apart, and there was problems, and town had no recourse but to pay for it. And that's how these ordinances came into play.
I was just
And
gonna
with the
say that.
timing of, hey, we're gonna release a certain percentage at this time, once it's accepted, but we're gonna hold X amount of dollars or percentage of that, just in case something happens down the road.
As a result of that case that you're describing.
Exactly.
We did amend the ordinance and
Exactly.
regulations to ensure that the town maintains at least 125% of the estimated cost to complete any remaining work. So we would never run into a situation where we're giving all the money back or enough of the money back that we're not retaining what we need to complete whatever work is remaining.
Right,
Mr.
right.
President.
Council Toronto.
Ron, so you said to complete the work that needs to be done. That's part of the ordinance for that reason, but there's no other work that needs to be done out there?
No, in this case, the work is done. So
Correct.
all we're holding is that maintenance bond for
And
1 year.
what percentage what's the dollar amount for that? Is that a percentage or dollar
The
amount?
maintenance bond is 10% of the initial security, which in this case, what we'd be holding is about $21,000. So we'll hold that for a year.
Is that enough?
That's what the ordinance calls for. That's what the regulations call for. I defer to the town engineer to comment on whether he thinks that's enough, but that is what we're required to hold.
I know we had looked at that as, because we said it's a percentage or a dollar amount. I mean, so we'll leave that up to you guys in regards to what that appropriate amount is. But to me, $21,000 doesn't seem like a lot of dollars if something sizable goes wrong. I mean, do they carry any insurance or is there anything in contract that carries to cover insurance for that period of time as well, or?
I'm not sure about that.
It depends upon the scope of the project too, and the cost of the project as well.
Right, it's all tied to that original security. So in this case, it is, it's a couple of 100 feet of roadway. That's all we're talking about
Right.
here.
Okay.
It's not
Yeah.
a very large area.
Okay.
It's
Sounds good.
essentially a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Yeah, Mrs. Santos.
Thank you, sir. Ron, this project has gone from 4 lots to 5 lots. That's what you told me this afternoon.
Well, the project was a 4-lot subdivision. That's what we're dealing with tonight, the original subdivision. Recently, one of the lots was subdivided into 2 lots.
And that's not in tonight's,
Well, that has nothing to do with what you're doing tonight, no.
okay. Are there any other projects like this? How many more projects do we have that are going to be used, land's going to be, open space is going to be gone?
There are several subdivisions currently either in the process or recently approved. Roadways, for example, on Compton View Drive, we'll be seeing that one come through the planning board process over the next couple of months. So there's a lot of activity right now.
So we're losing all our open space.
There are people developing their property, yes.
That's right.
Question.
Thank you.
Council Flynn.
Thank you. So, Ron, this road has been privately maintained up until this point, is that true?
I don't want to speak to what maintenance has happened on the road. There was a long period of time where we were working with the property or the developer, I should say, to get the remaining checklist items complete. Final coat of pavement went down not too long ago, so it's a relatively new course of pavement. So anything from assuming it happens tonight, anything from today going forward, the town would be responsible, except for that maintenance issue, for the maintenance of the road.
And this is an arrangement that when the project is approved, that's part of the approval, that it's the road is not the town's for a time and then it is going to be the town's? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So this was the plan? We're
This
not
ha-
doing anything that
No,
wasn't
this is-
already
this is-
planned?
This is
my
absolutely
question.
normal. Yep.
This is the standard process, yes. And it protects the town because the developer's got to put the road in, pay for that, post the bond, and so if they don't do it, the town's got the ability to do it, and then they've got to maintain it for a year afterwards before the town is on the hook. So the idea is to put the town in the best position, and I do know that not only the planning board reviews this very closely, but the town engineer and the public works director, and this particular one, we're very conservative in terms of what needed to be done to get the road to the point where we could be here today asking the council to accept it. And, you know, they were very adamant that things had to get done and you know, for the town's protection.
Okay. So just a last comment from myself anyway, Ron, is in any type of subdivision, the planning board, I'm sure they look at this, but I think we need to be a little bit more aggressive with making sure that, and I only say this because where I live, before the recession in 2007, 2008, there had been an approval of a change of the trailer park. And they were going to take them out of there, and they were going to put in 6 houses, but they weren't going to make them bring the water up from Gunning Court or Walcott, from wherever it was. And so as the town, over the years, the town has budgeted, when they could, monies to extend hydrants themselves for public safety where it made sense. So I think that we really need to take a hard look at that. I know financially sometimes it may not make sense for a developer, but I think we need to make it make sense for a developer. Because why should it be on the back of the town when it could be on the back of the developer? Because he's going to pass those costs on to the homeowner anyway, the people that are purchasing them anyway. So I think from a public safety perspective, you know, I'm not saying, but when it's around the corner like that, I was disappointed that it wasn't made to come up. Or like the one off of Prospect with where they play polo, you know, see if you can't get an easement. I'm not asking them to bring it all the way up Prospect and into their development. Why can't they try and get an easement from somebody on Reservoir Road where the water's right there? So we need to make sure we're getting creative, and I just think the town needs to be a little more aggressive with that, that's all. Okay.
Question on that, if you don't mind,
Mrs.
Mr.
Flynn.
President? I guess my question would be to Ron, procedurally, does the planning board or zoning board have the authority to request or require that, or does that need to be put in the regulations to make that happen? I understand where you're going with that, it makes sense, but, you know, if they don't have to, if it's not in the regs, they might need, you know, some encouragement. So I'm just wondering how that encouragement, what that would look like. Does it have to be in writing, or can the planning board say, we as a board prefer you to do this as part of the approval?
There are, and Peter can jump in if necessary, but I think there are limitations to what the planning board can ask for. You know, to Paul's point, you can't make them bring it 3 miles.
Right.
But on a case-by-case basis, and I think you all are aware that the planning board is well aware of the
Yep.
water issues.
Yep.
So I think we're going to see a little, I guess, more scrutiny of plans as they come in to determine if there is the opportunity to bring public water to a new development. If there's any opportunity to do that, I think the planning board is going to do the best they can to make that happen. Certainly, if there was some, I guess, stronger regulation in place, and again, I don't know if Peter has any advice on that, but we might have an opportunity to amend the regulations to specify in which types of situations a developer would be expected to extend the water line, which we don't have that in the regulations right now.
I think that's something we should look at, because that way we can have a little bite. You know, I don't mean it like that, but we can, you know, say, hey, look, if you want this, you need to do this, because it makes sense for the town and from a safety perspective. And, you know, again, we're not asking you to bring it 2 or 3 miles. We're asking you to bring it, you know, whatever, 500 feet or whatever it is, you know, so, okay. Very good. Thank you, Ron. We appreciate it. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion to receive said memorandum. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Resolution of the council, number 15, in reference to accepting Lewis Drive and associated public improvements for the purpose of town maintenance.
Motion to pass said resolution. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, email communication of Simon Cousins, Island Elements, Island Surf and Sports, Elemental Surf and Skate, in reference to Third Beach concession agreement.
To continue this item to the next regular meeting of the council, August 16th, 2021. Second.
A motion to continue. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Number 17, Town Council. Memorandum of Council Flynn in reference to remote public participation.
Motion to receive said memorandum. Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to receive. Counsel Flynn.
Thank you. This is a request for council discussion to continue online remote public participation at Middletown public meetings. As you can see in the docket package, there's an attached press release from the Attorney General that states public bodies may permit members of the public to participate remotely in open meetings. And dozens have been attending all the open meetings in Middletown by Zoom this last year plus. The more attending, the more are willing to participate in local government. The goal is to get people involved, and remote public participation has been a successful way to do that. Remote public participation allows access to those without childcare, those without transportation, which is not just those without a car, but those who maybe aren't on a bus line, or the bus doesn't run as late as the meetings go, or those who simply choose not to drive at night. It includes those with physical or medical challenges and allows them to participate in a meaningful way. With the cover memo is also a budget report from the Finance Department. It's reporting that the cost for Zoom, $8,800 a year. There may be alternatives, but this is still a bargain for encouraging and facilitating public participation. Remote public participation is an equitable service that can be used by all 16,000 Middletown residents and businesses. It increases transparency, adds accessibility to government, and makes Middletown more business and resident friendly. Personally, I don't think you can put a price on public participation, and I know the public appreciates the council's consideration. And Mr. President, back to you.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Any feelings? Counsel Logan.
I do have a feeling. I
Yes.
think it's a good thing. I think the public being able to have a say, a voice, if they can't be in chambers with us, is important. As we think about how we're moving the town forward, their comments, as we make decisions on their behalf, is probably a really important thing to consider. Giving them that platform so they can continue to have that mechanism to get to us in a very timely manner as we're having those discussions, it's critically important. I don't see any issue with us continuing to look at technology to drive more participation of our constituents.
Okay,
I would agree with that.
okay. That might have been the shortest you've ever said.
They said it
All
great,
right,
both of
that's
them.
fantastic.
Both of them said it
Thank you,
perfect.
Dennis. Mrs. Von Villis.
I think everything that they've said is valid. The only thing is, I think things have changed. COVID has made a big change, and that has made people reluctant, obviously, to go out, and certainly that would facilitate their being able to participate. However, if you remember before COVID, we had good participation here for the most part. My suggestion would be to, rather than leave it open-ended, that maybe we give it a try to the end of the year and then evaluate how well it worked and how much participation there was, and then see whether we should do it again.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I think that I agree with everything everyone said. I think, COVID opened our eyes to a lot of things, and certainly this is one of them, is from a participation standpoint. When I was coming in, just sitting in the chambers here by myself with the laptop, you could see all the people participating. And I think it's great that people participate. You brought up some valid points, whether it's childcare, whether it's you physically can't do it, but you can do it from home. There's no reason not to continue that. And I think it's a great thing that you brought up, and I think we need to move on it. So, I think the more participation, the better it is, I love in person, but there's some people that just can't make in person. So why can't you have both? I agree. Mrs. Santos.
How did we survive so many years without Zoom? This chamber was packed during budget time, or when there was a special item on the council, on the docket. People would pack this room. They would be sitting against the wall on both sides. How did we survive? People want to sit home and with their computers or 1 and 2 laptop computers, probably have somebody else in the background looking up information, recording it to the other person, to the council person. How did we survive without that?
Well, we survived, and
And,
times,
no, and there was no problem with people packing this room.
nope, understood. Times change. And if you don't change with the times, you fall behind. And I understand what you're saying, but I think in order to keep up with the times and to be able to get more participation, if that's what it takes, I certainly don't see anything wrong with it. I think, again, we probably never would have done it if there wasn't COVID. I don't think anybody would have done it if it wasn't COVID. Zoom has opened avenues of communication that weren't thought of in 2019 or before March 15th of 2020, right? So, you know, I think the more people that can participate, whether it's in front of you or whether it's at home on Zoom or wherever they're at, it could be, maybe they're traveling, like Dennis. He did a meeting from Texas or wherever he was because he couldn't make it, but he could participate via Zoom. So I think it's great. I'm certainly going to support it. I think we need to do that for members of the public that want to participate with us and want to comment. And hey, we might get a few more good ideas, and we might take a little more criticism here and there, but that's part of the game, and we'll take that as it comes.
One
Yes-
further
yes, ma'am.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Brown, what do you anticipate the cost of this continuing? What's it going to go?
It's $8,800 for the year.
Well, no. So the problem we have is that our platform doesn't work well with Zoom. So we're either going to talk into the microphone and not hear each other in the chamber, or you'll hear people talking at home. And that's because there's no noise canceling feature within our sound system. There's also some jury rigging that we did to make the video work during the past months. And then, as Councilor Flynn would give us the thumbs up and thumbs down throughout the meeting, I need to get more bandwidth into the building to get rid of the latency and the video. So I've already asked Matt to contact our vendor to see what platform we need to operate on so that we can successfully host and from a sustainability standpoint, host these meetings. And then the last piece I'd say is if we're going to have a full chamber and we're going to have a full meeting, I'm going to need someone else to moderate, that part of the meeting. So there could be an additional labor cost.
So a ballpark figure, Mr. Brown?
Can you get back to us with that?
Yeah, no, and that's my
What's
point.
what's the time? Do you know? You don't know any of that yet.
I have a ballpark price from the vendor, but I don't have a detailed, it's not detailed enough that I could say that's a cost that we would be successful with. So Matt's working on it.
Okay.
I would hope in the next couple of meetings we would have that.
Yeah, if you can
Okay.
get that back to us at some point,
Yeah, so-
the next couple of
But
meetings, that'd be
I
fantastic.
anticipated the discussion to go in this direction, and I talked to Joe Nicholson, Newport's looking at the same thing, and I think, Chris used what is the platform, that we've
Yeah, I
got
don't think
beyond-
anybody looked at it, Sean, because I thought that once they thought if we got back to some type of normalcy, that would end. But it's not gonna end because, it opened our eyes to, hey, look at the participation we can have. So
No,
we need to figure out from a technology standpoint and make a decision based on cost. I mean, if it's something that's astronomical, I'm basing it on my decision tonight on the $8,800. But I didn't realize that that's not just it. That would be it if we continued full Zoom, right?
Yeah, that's just Zoom, if everybody
Okay.
was on the Zoom. But,
Okay.
we've been able to shed a lot of wires between the last meeting and this meeting.
Yes.
So it feels normal again, but if we have to go back, the wires go back, and then we're sort of patching our way to having a hybrid meeting, so.
I mean, I think we need to look at it anyway because I just don't see Zoom going away. I just don't. I just think it's another avenue for someone to, and let's face it, when you get in front of that podium and you're out there and you don't do this all the time like we do, I mean, we still get nervous sometimes. We have to say something that might be uncomfortable or might be unpopular. But residents that come before and want to stand up there, most of them won't get up there and say what they want because they're shaking in their boots or their shoes because they're nervous, or they just don't have that to get in front of people to speak. So if it gives them that platform in their comfort zone at home, then why not? You know? So,
Mr. President?
Mrs. Flynn.
If I could just add also, the participation does not have to involve video. It could simply be audio, so long as people have a path to get their comments and their input shared with the town council.
Yeah, 'cause they can stream
It doesn't
it.
have to be fancy.
Because they can stream it live, right?
Well, YouTube is a live viewing
YouTube.
only. You can't
But-
participate.
If I just may, just to add, I think it is important to explore what else is out there, because if this is something we're gonna be doing long-term, not only, let's say, for council, but for zoning board hearings, and, you know, as an
Yep.
attorney that practices and does contested hearings, if we're gonna do this hybrid format, it's gotta be one that actually works.
Yes.
Where you've got some witnesses,
Yes.
you've got attorneys cross-examining people live without not having a delay and those things. So I think exploring a format that is gonna be a little more seamless than the jury rig system we had before makes
Yeah, we
sense.
can't operate off the jury rig system. It did not work.
No, I mean,
It's the
tonight,
best we could do at the time.
no, but tonight is infinitely more efficient from a
Yes.
meeting standpoint. I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
there's just a natural flow to it.
Yeah.
And we need a platform that will give us that same flow. Just,
Okay.
and I think that's exactly
Yeah,
where you're
I just
headed.
think that if we're gonna get a price from the vendor, make sure we're doing it right. And I'm sure, I know you wouldn't do anything less, I just had to say that,
No,
just publicly to get it out there, but if we're gonna invest in this, let's do it right, let's make sure we get a great system that works for everybody, and we don't, hopefully minimize our technology difficulties, and then we can make a decision from there based, because it's taxpayer dollars, so. Okay? Fair enough? Okay. So we have a motion and a second to receive Terry's memorandum. All in favor? Aye. Okay, anybody oppose? And Dan wanted to speak on that, but he left. All right, okay.
I have
Mrs. Santos.
I want to make sure I understand this correctly. We all voted for it, so we're not going to start Zoom again until we get the figures back from Mr. Brown.
Yeah, we need to see what it
Okay,
takes.
thank you.
Right,
So I
what it
wanted to
take,
know.
yes, ma'am. Okay, Town Administrator. Number 18, continued from the regular meeting, July 19th, 2021. The memorandum of the Town Planner through the Town Administrator in reference to the full build impact study, prioritized recommendations, costs, and traffic action items. Motion to receive said memorandum.
Sorry.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Sean? I know we have Steve Cabral here this evening. So if Steve wants to come up and take the lead on this, or Ron, however you guys want to do it, it's up to you.
I think
know
you're
what the-
spot on.
What's that?
You're spot on. We'll let Steve take the lead.
There you go, Steve.
Just the council did ask, or the council did identify areas that they wanted to prioritize. We were asked to go back, work with Steve, and develop cost estimates, proposals for that work. And he is here tonight to discuss those numbers.
So welcome, Steve. Just a name and address, and if you want to, we get going on this, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, good evening. It's good to be back. I'm Steve Cabral with Horseman Engineering of 151 Centerville Road, Warwick, Rhode Island. And as you know, for the past couple of years, we've been working with the...
Steve, could you just speak into, pull that mic a little closer, please? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, as you know, for the past couple of years, we've been working with the town staff, engineering, planning, and the town administrator, identifying potential issues associated with full build development as landowners develop their properties, all in conformance with the town zoning ordinance. And as you recall, over the spring, we were here before you when we discussed recommended, excuse me, action items. And the council actually identified their priorities. And our mission, our task was to actually go back, work together with the town, and for each of the action items recommended by the council, identify a realistic time frame to perform that action item, and develop an approximate cost. And so what I'll do is I'll just quickly go through those action items.
Okay.
And they were divided into two groups. The first group is the high priority issues, and the council identified surface water and groundwater as the most high priority action items. And then we also have two longer term action items, and they pertain to surface water as well as traffic. So for the first high priority item, it has to do with the issue that over the past 20 years, the town and developers have been investing in stormwater treatment systems. On the memorandum, they're referred to as BMPs, and that's just lingo that Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management uses, and BMP stands for Best Management Practices. Okay, the first item under the high priority 1 is to update the inventory of the townwide BMPs, and we estimate the entirety of action item 1 would take from 3 to 9 months. And actually, the first item, update the inventory of BMPs, is essentially completed, because we are aware that Public Works and Engineering does have an ongoing list that they maintain. So the first task would just be to run through the existing inventory and make sure that any recent construction elements have been identified and added to that list. We estimate that the level of effort or cost would be a town staff member of about 12 hours. Item B, the second action item under the water quality testing, would be to take a look at that inventory and establish a priority ranking. We estimate that we will identify about 12 to 24 existing BMPs that are worth pursuing for further testing. Now, in item C, where we actually performed the testing, we've only allocated time to examine 5 BMPs. And the reason for that is this is really an experiment which will provide the town with actual data as to whether or not certain BMPs are performing as originally intended. So the intent is to not test all of the BMPs, but to take a look at different types of BMPs that were built and to examine a variety of them so that we could come back to the community and state that this type of BMP works or functions much more better than BMP type 2. And then we could use that type of information going forward as new development projects come before the town. To identify those priority BMPs, we estimate that the town staff would take approximately 16 hours. And for the town consultant, we've estimated only slightly less than $1,700 to perform that task. Now, one of the reasons the costs are not significant is that the town has quite a database of the drainage systems throughout the town, and many previous studies are available. Item C under priority 1 is to establish a schedule and procedures for the sampling. Now, this is where we begin getting into the more time-consuming issues. For example, we're assuming that we're going to find 5 BMPs that are worth examining or testing. So what we have to do is make sure that they've been properly maintained over the years. For example, we know that if we just selected a BMP A, but it wasn't maintained, the results would not be valid. So we want to look at each of the BMPs to be tested to make sure they were properly maintained and that we could expect to get valid results. We also have to determine whether or not we have adequate access to take the samples, and we also have to determine the specific constituents that those BMPs were originally designed and built to mitigate. So we'll be identifying access locations, whether or not they've been properly maintained, identifying the proper constituents to be tested, and we'll be basically developing a program so that the technicians will know exactly what they need to do when they go to each of the 5 BMPs. We estimate that item, which is item C, would take town staff about 16 hours and a consultant about $1,900. Okay, now we're getting into the actual testing. what we anticipate is that of the 5 sites, each time we perform a test, we would take 2 tests, one at the inlet, one at the outlet, and that over the course of one rain event, we anticipate taking 4 samples. And the reason for taking 4 samples over one rain event is that we want to find, well, we know that if we just take one grab sample, it's just a snapshot in time and it's not going to give us valid results. So the intent is to take a series of tests throughout a rain event, so that we can really identify during a storm if the effluent is better than the influent. Now, there are some experts that feel the best way to document if BMPs are operating correctly isn't to test the BMPs themselves, but actually test the rivers or the streams or the ponds. Because their reasoning would be that the goal of the BMPs are to improve the water quality conditions. Why don't we just focus on the water quality conditions? The reason we're not recommending that is that the watersheds are so large and that there are so many external factors that influence the water quality of the streams and lakes and ponds that we really wouldn't be able to come back to you and say what type of BMP is effective. That's why we're recommending that we focus on identifying a variety of BMPs and getting actual tests and actual data. Okay, the last action item under this item would be the lab tests. We estimate that the lab costs alone for the 40 samples that we'll be taking during the storm events would cost about $12,000. And of course, at this stage, we'll contact different laboratories and get competitive prices for those lab tests. And then we've just allocated 16 hours for town staff and a maximum of $4,000 for the consultant to actually evaluate the data, compile it in a report, and then return to the council to present the findings. The second high priority item is to formalize a program with other organizations for watershed monitoring and testing. And this item came about because we recognize, and the town recognizes, that there are different volunteer and regional organizations that collect data. And everyone seems to have their own database, but it's really not coordinated as efficiently as it should and could. And so we feel that if the town staff allocated about 24 hours over the next 3 to 9 months, that there could be the development of a town-wide database that would benefit not only from the town data, but also from external organizations. Okay, the third and last action item under surface water would be the establishment of a nutrient control ordinance. Now, this actually may be nothing more than improving existing nutrient regulations that the town already has. For example, in the town zoning ordinance and other ordinances, there are references to nutrients. And when I say nutrients, I'm referring to phosphorus and nitrogen. Those are typical natural nutrients that are present in fertilizer. And as we all know, not all homeowners are conscientious about the quantity of fertilizer that they put on their lawn. And what we find is that commercial landscape firms tend to be more efficient because they're looking at the cost of the fertilizer, so they know that if they put excess fertilizer, it's really not benefiting the lawn, but it's causing more expense on their part.
I think Scott's is gonna take care of that, the price of their fertilizer and weed and feed over at Home Depot or wherever it's at, you know?
Yeah.
It's through the roof.
It certainly is. So, what we all know is that the town has a good educational platform on the town's website. And just checking today, I saw that there were a few pamphlets that educate homeowners on the use of fertilizer. So this topic really is all about educating homeowners and local businesses on methods and approaches to reduce the phosphorus and nitrogen loads that reaches the rivers. And just as a quick reminder, phosphorus is a natural nutrient that has a negative impact on freshwater wetlands and streams and ponds. And nitrogen is the nutrient that has the biggest impact on the saltwater resources. So that's why we plan on addressing both of those. Now, for the nutrient control ordinance or educational program, we're estimating that the town staff would take approximately 22 hours, and the consulting services would be less than 2,000. And we certainly don't plan on reinventing the wheel. We plan on benefiting from what other communities and other states have done, and basically expanding upon what the town has already done in the past. Okay, the next high priority item has to do with groundwater. And under groundwater, there are three subtasks. The first one has to do with increasing public awareness and education of private well testing. And basically what this is all about, we recognize that in town, there's approximately 1,000 wells that serve as the water supply for the homeowners. But it's not well documented what the water quality of that water is. There's just a natural assumption that when someone buys a house and they turn on the spigot, that the water is safe to drink. So the real focus of this priority item is to educate the homeowners and to develop a program where the town can assist them in taking samples and voluntarily reporting that data to the town, and then the town can establish a database. And one of the benefits of that will be if there's significant participation, it'll be much easier for the town to identify sections of town that may have water quality issues, with the well drinking water. It'll also benefit the town if people would volunteer information as to whether or not their wells go dry at certain times. So basically, the public awareness for private well testing, we anticipate it could all be performed by town staff, and we've estimated that the hours would be, 40, 72, say approximately 80 to 90 hours over the course of the next 3 to 9 months.
Steve, could you just speak into that a little more, speak a little louder, please?
Yes. Yep, I'm sorry about that. I tend to speak quieter as I ramble on.
That's okay.
Okay. Okay, the second high priority item under groundwater. Oh, actually, I already hit upon this. The first one was really the educational program, making the homeowners aware and beginning to coordinate the process. Item 2 was actually to collect the data and prepare the database with all of the well test data and the performance of the wells. Now, because there are over 1,000 wells in town, we anticipate town staff would take approximately 120 hours for that item. And if a consultant was used in order to develop a database which is searchable and functional and attractive for the council members to go to, we anticipate no more than $4,200. And that's mostly data entry and data input. The third action item under groundwater is actually an item that was indirectly referred to by one of the council members earlier when Ms. Santos was discussing lot sizes and water extensions. Action item 3 has to do with determining the minimum lot sizes that the town should allow for parcels that need to rely upon private wells. Right now, the town does have minimum lot size standards, but it's been many years, if not decades, where there's been any evaluation as to whether or not certain parcels are of an adequate size that rainfall that lands on that parcel can actually support the water that's to be consumed. And one of the reasons for that is, as developments come before the town, there's always a concern with the butters that as additional wells are installed, that there's a negative impact on their wells being abutters. And so one of the benefits of this is we'll be able to give a minimum lot size recommendation so that those abutters could be assured that the lot size is suitable to collect and infiltrate sufficient water to support that house.
Steve, we have a question.
Yeah.
Council Flynn.
Pardon the interruption, Steve. Thank you, Mr. President. But I actually highlighted that one item because I think it's a critical piece of data as applications are being submitted into our building office. And I was concerned because the time estimation is 1.5 to 3 years And I didn't know if number 3, finding out that lot size, if that was something that had to follow items number 1 and 2, or if there's a way to shrink that time estimate, because I think we need to know that sooner than later. And I'd at least want input, of course, from my other counselors. But am I looking at that properly?
Yes, you are. The time certainly can be minimized. The reason that we have it longer than the 9 months is that we wanted to benefit from the data that we would obtain from the earlier stages, but it certainly could be reduced, I would say, to the 9 to 12 month range. We could give you realistic conclusions.
Then that's something I would be very interested in, based on the implication of not having that and approving development perhaps on lots that would be even smaller, that might be allowed now, finding out that answer. Does that make sense to the rest of my colleagues?
It is viable.
Is it possible to do that?
Yes, it is.
I'm only asking that because you said that, I'm sure you laid this out strategically, based on information that you just said that you would need to collect, but you can still collect it and at the same time minimize the time?
Yes, knowing that that's a high priority for the council, we can certainly expedite that item.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's easy. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so now we're on to the longer term impacts. Now these, I don't want to say they're not high priority, but these were not as time sensitive as the ones that I've already ran through. And the first 3 have to do with surface water impacts also. The first one has to do with updating the town stormwater ordinance. There is currently a stormwater ordinance, which is very informative and has strict requirements for development. What we're proposing is we take a closer look at the requirements and make sure that the requirements are watershed specific, as opposed to being a general ordinance that applies town-wide. So basically, we'd like to fine-tune it so that each area certainly would benefit as much as possible. The second action item under the long-term surface water impacts would be to work with large agricultural properties to assist them in identifying and implementing runoff control measures. And as you know, the town and different agencies have been working with some of the agricultural properties to install stormwater BMPs, but we'd like to make a focused effort to make sure that every agricultural property in town has access to the town's resources, so that we and the town staff could give them some guidance as to what improvements they could implement. So we're not stating that we were going to design and install them, but it's really, again, more of an educational action item.
Okay.
Make sure if there are easy implementation measures that could improve surface runoff, we want to make sure that the owner is aware of the options and the benefits to the community.
Okay.
The action item 3 under surface water impacts would be to identify and prioritize flood-prone areas for remediation actions. Of course, Warren, the town engineering staff, has a good understanding of flood-prone areas, but the intent of action item 3 is to more formalize the program. We want to be able to have a prioritized list of every area in town that does have flooding, so that the town's not responding to problems as they arise. We want to make sure that we have a document.
I can't believe we don't have that now. I mean, we know where it floods, right?
Yes, it certainly do, but this is more of putting it in a document that's available to everyone.
Okay.
So it's really formalizing the process. Pretty much many of the items that I've discussed tonight, they do exist, but it's rather they're addressed in an informal manner. So the benefit of this study and approach is that everything is going to be formalized and documented So as councilwoman, you'll be able to actually, it'll be easier to track it. Track issues, concerns, and problems. Okay, the last long-term priority item recommended by the council for further study.
Steve, can we stop right there and before we get into the traffic? Does anybody have any questions about any of the drainage or surface water or groundwater priorities that Steve's speaking about?
Just an observation.
Okay.
Because these programs are going to be put into place in perpetuity. It's not like we're going to start this year and just not do it the next year. So we need to be cognizant of the man-hour. I'm just doing some quick math. We're talking 9 weeks of man-hours, town man-hours that are go into just the high-priority items.
Yeah.
So just be aware, there's a continued cost for this, and yes, there will be an inherent benefit for our ground and surface water, but we need to start thinking about budgeting potentially also as we continue these programs to roll them forward, because we're already stretching the town man-hours thin. So just be mindful of that at the same time.
Sean?
So one of the weekly meetings I'm having now with the Public Works staff is about, which sort of parallels this, is their town's requirements for the MS4 permit. And there are a number of requirements where we are not doing, the level of our work isn't high enough. It needs to be improved, and a lot of the work that Steve is talking about tonight goes along with it. So I would just, when you talk about, it's not new work in many cases. There's some items are above and beyond what's required by the permit, but the foundation of the work that Steve's talking about are items that are going to be action items anyway in some way. So there's sort of two things going on. One that's a internal discussion, and the other, the discussion with you and the planning board and Steve. So, but they.
Yeah, and I mean, some of these things like down on the Maidford, we're already doing some of these things, right?
Yes.
You know, with this whole Elizabeth Scott consultant group as well. So, the other thing I want to make sure of is, I want to make sure I understand it, is that when you talk about wells, we're not talking about making people test their wells, right? This is voluntary and educational.
Solely voluntary.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're clear on that and the public's clear on that, because, you know, one thing people don't want is more government and more bills, you know? So I just want to make sure, look, we all want cleaner water. And my last comment about the water is, I know over time, Middletown's certainly done its fair share of trying to improve water quality, and will continue to do that. Now, this drinking water, this water goes, some of it's diverted into Gardner Pond and Nelson Pond, right? Now, not all that water in those two particular ones go to just Middletown residents.
Of course.
So what part does Newport play in the cost of some of this stuff? Because they're the ones that benefit and raise the rates. Of course, we want cleaner and better quality water, but it seems like it's always on the back of the Middletown taxpayer. And I know we have an obligation to do that. But when water's diverted to them for water throughout the island, you know, it shouldn't be just on the back of Middletown, is what I'm saying, because it's wrong. It should be, Sean, you should be talking to Joe Nicholson and saying, hey, you know, we have to pay our fair share of sewer that goes your way. Why aren't you helping us with water? Or maybe we just call it even. Sorry.
Creative.
Yes, Mrs. Flynn.
Thank you. That's come up before, and it's not just Newport. It's whoever uses Newport water, because I believe Middletown provides quite a bit of it. But I did want to clarify, all of this work to really the heavy lift. Once we have a lot of it formalized and the databases, it's really just maintenance or occasional updating. Is that true or no?
Yes, most of the effort is putting the programs together. It's easier to maintain as long as it's maintained continuously. If you miss a year or two, then that's where the added expense comes in.
Okay.
But yes, the biggest burden is at this stage.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilor Toronto.
And, you know, Paul, you've mentioned a number of times, we've invested a lot in the infrastructure today, and we're not really sure whether it's working or not. So I think that part of this is kind of validating what we've done is working.
Right.
And how can we make it better?
Right. Yeah, some of the things we've done, like the end of Green and Avenue, Berkeley and Paradise there, that, them water management systems that were put in, you know, where they put the plantings and they put the mulch, and people are going, what are they doing? You know, trying to cleanse some of that water and purify it before it heads downstream. Is that working or not? So we need to find that out. And part of this will be testing and some of these best management practices. One thing, Steve, that crossed my mind is, you know, when we have all these best management practices, how can we manage those? If we just focus on, you know, 5 or whatever the priorities are, and then if we get results from those and we're satisfied with those, maybe we move on to the next 5 or whatever. So, because if we're all over the map trying to manage 20 best practices, are we really being effective?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah. Councilor Flynn.
Yeah, I'm back on the money issue, and I didn't know, you know, Elizabeth Scott, I think she's, knows where to tap in to get money for water projects. It was the impression I got, and I didn't know if maybe, you know, Steve or our planning department might also tap into the state or other agencies that might have grants to make sure we maintain our high water quality. Just to keep ears to the ground, I guess, you know, because it isn't a cheap, you know, this is, the line items don't look like a lot, but they're adding up.
Yeah. Okay, good point. Any other conversations or comments about the priorities of ground surface water, groundwater, or surface water? Okay. Mr. Brown.
Just a very last comment, and it's to the testing. So one area with the MS4 is we have to annually test we have 25 outfalls in the town of Middletown, and that's something that Warren will be working on with Steve to make sure we come into compliance with that testing requirement. So there will be a considerable amount of testing going on that will inform the council and the public about where there are issues within the watershed.
Okay. All right, thank you. Steve, go ahead with the traffic, please.
Okay. Thank you. The very last item, which is more of the longer-term issue, has to do with basically getting a town effort together, basically a workshop with each of the town departments, including offhand the police, public works, fire, engineering, planning, and essentially all of the town departments that are out and about, you know, on a given day, and that know the community and the roadways the best. And to look at, well, basically, to look at the intersections that we identified as those that could benefit from minor tweaks to improve the efficiency or the levels of service. And as you recall from the full bill study, we had identified quite a few intersections along West Main and East Main Road where we feel that the signal timing could be adjusted slightly to improve traffic flow through that area. We've also identified a few intersections that may benefit just by restriping or modifying the lane widths, you know, so that we could fit in a separate left turn or right turn lane. And we've also identified potential locations where small roundabouts may function better than the standard intersection. Now, I could gladly go through the detailed list, but I know you have the list in front of you.
You must have been reading my mind, Steve. Because about 30 seconds ago, I go, I hope he doesn't go through every one of these.
No.
Okay, excellent.
So basically, the action item for the traffic improvements is really to have a workshop among town departments to go through the list that we prepared and to supplement it with their firsthand knowledge of the town.
Yeah. Yeah, and we would also, before we moved on anything like that, we want to make sure that we have our residents involved in those hearings as well, just to make sure that we get all the input we can from them on their feelings of, you know, whether they want it or whether they don't want it, because that's who we work for.
Yes.
Okay.
And what we'll find is that many of the issues are probably on state highways. So then this committee or this workshop group could prepare a list of recommendations to DOT that the town feels it should be a priority.
Okay. Council Flynn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I think when we had our joint meeting on April 28th, I think we did not talk about traffic, so I don't think we've talked about this, the council with the planning board at all. And you read my mind, Mr. President, as far as, taking that playbook from the Lower Aquidneck and Paradise Avenue folks and getting the residents involved from the get-go, because they're really more intimately familiar riding those roads and observing, 24/7 what goes on. And I was, as an example, the roundabouts that you've got quite a few of them mentioned here, and already RIDOT has abandoned a couple on Lower Aquidneck. They're not doing them. So they sort of reversed a path that they took a number of years ago and realized there either wasn't room or it wasn't going to work. And, the residents testified to that right from the get-go. So I'm not sure what this is long-term. So when this comes up, I think we should all agree on the steps to take to be efficient and not waste people's time.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I think you have to look at them individually. I think you're spot on about the room, just not enough room there, the ones she referenced. And some of these, when I was reading it, may not have that room or may. So it's something that needs to be certainly discussed and vetted publicly and see what the public wants to do.
Yeah, I agree. This list certainly is not a final recommendation. It's just a recommendation of options to look at. And what we have learned from working with DOT is, what DOT is finding that different communities have different perspectives on roundabouts. Some communities love them and others would prefer the old-fashioned traffic light. So they will certainly listen to you and the residents.
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Any questions about the traffic for Steve? I just have one final question, Sean. I would really like to entertain a conversation with the city of Newport about the cost of this water. I mean, it keeps coming up, and we're not moving forward with it. I'm serious. We pay our fair share for sewer, and justifiably so. But I think we need to have a conversation with them about water. It's not going to go away. It's only going to get more expensive, and I think again, we certainly do our fair share, and I think that, if they're going to benefit from it, they should have some skin in the game as far as financially.
So are you talking about the stormwater? Or when you say water, the cost of water?
So everything we do, right, as far as trying to improve the water quality, because otherwise, if we just shut the gates and let it go out to the ocean, bacteria would eventually kill any issues, right?
I would need to go back. There's an agreement between the town of Middletown and the city of Newport about water.
Okay.
So I think that's where we'd have to go back to and find out how the city of Newport, water department, and the town of Middletown established its relationship.
Okay, because that's news to me that we have an agreement.
It's one of those things that's hard, it's got beautiful handwriting that you can't read because you're not from the 18th century or something. But there is a written agreement between the two. The only other thing I've learned over time is that we're not immune from the Clean Water Act.
No.
And that's another problem. Even if Newport is processing the water once it gets to the pond, we still have a responsibility to manage the water before it gets to the pond. So that, and that's, I think one of the things that we're working on, and we need to have a discussion with Attorney Desitel, is to understand, I think, as a starting point is, say with the TMDLs, with the new regulation that's coming out, where does the responsibility lie when those TMDLs are placed on the Bailey Brook and the Mayford River? I think that may help everybody understand what we can and can't expect from
And
the
look,
city.
and I know I think we all know what our obligation is, and I think we've certainly upheld our obligation, or we continue to try to improve, and without hesitancy. But however, at some point, it's only what's fair is fair. And if they're benefiting from it, then we're holding up our end. I think they should have some stake in it, financially. Shouldn't fall on just Middletown residents when the water's going to Newport, and they're benefiting from that. And our residents are too, but they're paying for it in two ways. They're paying for it on things we do here from a tax perspective, unless it's a grant or something else, and they're paying for it when they get charged for it. So, you know, I think it's only fair that we look at something like that, just my opinion. And I'd love to see that crazy handwriting agreement.
That's Mr. Peckham's
Mr.
handwriting.
Peckham's handwriting, yeah, okay. Steve, thank you very much. Does anybody have any further questions of Steve?
Well, thank you, it was good seeing you all.
We're looking forward
you,
to
Steve.
this. Thank you.
It goes out to Little Compton.
Okay. Let's move on to, so one last question on this one. So what is the next step? Sean, any idea what the next step is here with this full build-out? Is it, they just start implementing these, what we prioritize? Is that how this is going to go? Or is there some type of resolution based on cost, or you do it in phases where you don't need a resolution?
I have it. I'm thinking. I think what I'd like to do is sit with Ron and Warren Hall.
Okay.
Bring a recommendation back.
Fair enough.
again, Because we're looking at the permit and what Steve presented in your comments tonight.
Yeah, no problem, because sometimes when we go through things and we kind of leave it, and it's like, okay, where are we going? What's the next step? And even we're not sure, so we got to ask, okay? All right, thank you. Okay, number 19, again, Steve, thank you. 19, communication of Terrence Gray, Acting Director, Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, in reference to 2021 DEM Recreational Trail Grant application, Valley Trail Expansion Award, $80,000.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to receive.
So just very quickly, the amount that we ended up receiving for the grant was $80,000. We would be required to match that with 20%. That is less than we had originally had forecast. We originally had asked for $100,000, which was the max. So what has been discussed internally is that ask the council to accept the grant, recognize there's a 20% match, but then the administration would then proceed. We would bid out the project basically at that $100,000 budget, which was something that council wanted to consider, and then also bid the full project out, which we believe has a cost of about $187,000. And we would bring those bids back to you and then make a decision.
So Sean, what does everyone gets that?
I wanted clarification.
Oh, okay.
How that would work. Would you put out two
Getting a bid
separate
for both,
bids?
two separate bids.
Well,
opposed to one that would be in
one
phase-
bid with a bid alternate.
Okay.
Same idea, but one bid with a bid alternate.
I don't know what bid alternate is, I'm sorry.
So one for the 100,000, the 80 for the grant, and the 20 from us, and then one for the full, the 80 from the grant, and the 107 from us to make up the 187 if we decide to do the 6/10 of a mile. Sean, what would the 100 get us as far as you know? Is it 3/10 of a mile? Is it half of the 6?
So I had I would call it a very preliminary rough discussion with Warren today, and his comment was that it would probably provide access from Paul Avenue to Adelaide, because you have to consider there's a certain amount of base cost in the project just off the bat. So
You're right.
The property, you know, does have contamination from agricultural use. So there's like a base cost of $15,000 just for the consultant and the permitting. You know, so we start off with that dollar amount, and there's some other costs. So we would need to go back and take a look, maybe try to smooth out, you know, eliminate some of the meandering that happens to shorten the distance. But we're really not going to know until we go out to bid, because it might be, this is one of those odd bids where, because it's a good because it's at the end of the year. So it may be I had enough business this year, I cover my general and administrative costs, so I can lowball it and carry some work into the winter, or we might just get everybody's busy and they don't want the work and everybody bids high. So I think it's a really tough question to answer until we just get prices in here.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, any further?
Yeah, I think when we originally had heard this, we were looking at that big, the 187, and then we were like, and that kind of thought that they were going to go back and look at what we could get for 100 in regards to the open space. What would it look like if we did 100 and not 187? But it sounds like we don't have that answer yet.
No, and it looks like we're gonna look at both. Well, we weren't sure we were gonna get the grant at all. Now we have an answer that we got the grant, so we got the 80. So now we need to figure out how you wanna proceed. Do you wanna proceed with the 80 and a 20 for 100,000 and we only get, what we get? Or we do we take the grant at 80 and then we make up the difference of 107,000. Sean, have you identified the funding source of 107,000?
It could come from an open space bond or one of the other capital funds.
Okay.
So I think
Would
we
the
have a
open
number of
space
options.
bond hit the tax rate, though?
Eventually.
It would, okay. Or is there another round of grants
Right.
that were available that we can apply and potentially get maybe next year and then cover the majority of the costs or?
So with this particular round, so DEM typically looks unfavorably on subsequent requests if you haven't done the first part of the work. So I think we would have to do some project and
okay.
then reapply, but not do the work and reapply, if that makes sense.
Right, so if we did the work, say the council said, you know what, Sean, let's do the 100,000. And then we completed that, and when is the grant, when you're able to apply for the grant again?
It will probably be a year from now, but it's not a
Okay.
definite month, so.
Okay. So, something to consider, okay? Mrs. Flynn?
Thank you. So Sean, are we looking at the orange dotted line as far
Yes.
as the trail that will be worked on with this grant and with this proposal? Do you
I have a black and white copy. It's
It is the orange.
Far right, it's the orange one?
Yes.
Okay.
it's
It is the orange.
property.
So I want to go back to this alternate bid thing, because I'm thinking in my head how to compare. Because one company might say, well, I can, 100,000 will get you this much of the orange. And another company might say, well, this 100,000 with us will only get you this much of the orange with our procedure or what we do. So when you're getting the bids, with this alternate bid, is every company going to show you what you can buy from them for 100,000 and for 187,000? Is that what that is?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is not my forte, I just wanted to make sure I
Yes.
was clear. So you will be able to compare them pretty reasonably?
Yes.
And we'll have all the pieces. Can we hire, well, never mind, I retract that question.
Okay.
Do you want me to read this whole thing now?
Any further discussion? Mrs. Santos?
Oh, boy. Motion to accept the 2021 DEM Recreation Trail Grant application, Valley Trail expansion for $80,000, and which requires a 20%.
Yes, we had a motion, a second to receive said communication. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Number 20 is, yes. Thank you for keeping us straight,
Thank you, Wendy.
Wendy. 20, memorandum of town planner through town administrator reference to 2020 RIDEM Trail Grants Valley Park Trails Extension.
Motion to receive said memorandum. Second.
Motion is second to receive. Any further discussion on the trails? Mrs. Flynn?
Is this the same? I was a little confused.
Well, I think there was two. I think it was presented in two, one for the 100 and one for the total 187.
That's exactly what Ron had done.
Yeah.
Just an and, an or. It just didn't end up on the docket the way that we.
That's fine.
You got a WWRD, what would Ron do? So that's how I think. Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay. Sorry, Ron, just having fun with you. Okay.
Thank you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate
So motion is second to receive on number 20. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Mrs. Santos.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're forgiven. Motion to accept the 2021 DEM Recreation Trail Grant application, Valley Trail expansion for $80,000, and which requires a 20% or $20,000 match from the town, and further, authorize the town administrator to solicit bids for the project. One, as initially proposed with a budget of $187,139, and with a proposed budget of $100,000.
Second.
So that motion basically is the bid and the alternate bid.
And the 187 is the alternate part.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Excellent. Thank you. Number 21, resolution of the council in reference to 2020 RIDM Trail Grant, Valley Park Trails Expansion, authorizing the town administrator to accept the grant and execute the grant agreement and allocate town matching funds in the amount of $107,139.
To withdraw this item at the request of the administration.
Second.
So the motion to withdraw this item at the request of the administration, based on what we just previously did, and a resolution really at this time is inappropriate because it needs to go out to bid, okay? And it'll be the same thing on 22. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So 22. Resolution of the council in reference to 2020 RIDM Trails Grant, Valley Park Trails Expansion, authorizes the town administrator to accept the grant and execute the grant agreement and allocate town matching funds in the amount of $20,000.
Motion to withdraw this item at the request of the administration. Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Number 23, memorandum of town administrator in reference to Chase's Lane commercial traffic.
Motion to receive said memorandum. Second.
We have a motion is second to receive. Mr. Brown.
At your last meeting, Rick Lombardi from Chase Estates, that neighborhood,
Yep.
made a presentation to the town council about his concerns and specific to commercial traffic on the road. The council had directed me to look at the planning and zoning board files to see whether or not there was any restrictions placed on truck traffic on Chase's Lane. With the assistance of the planner, I was able to identify the memo from the planning board. They had actually recommended that the entrance on the western side of the property be restricted from the use by trucks. However, and you'll see where I've also included the zoning board decision, the zoning board did not adopt that recommendation, so truck traffic is permitted to use the entrance on Chase's Lane. The other information I gathered, because it was readily available, was from the speed feedback signs.
Yeah.
It doesn't really speak to commercial traffic versus,
Right.
regular traffic, but it just does highlight that our traffic calming measures are working out there. I think that's what that provides you, not necessarily information for what you're considering. I also did reach out to Captain MacGyver on Naval Station Newport and discuss the issue with him. He was going to talk to the different commands in the base and ask them to talk to their vendors to see if they can make sure they avoid the neighborhood and use the access highway. However, I think just as we all are sitting here, I think we can all agree that the only way to really prohibit the commercial traffic is to restrict it from the road itself. You can see from, it's interesting, it's interesting because it's a lot, the amount of traffic that does go through the neighborhood at the beginning of the day, lunchtime, and at 5 o'clock. It is a neighborhood heavily impacted by the people commuting to work, so getting the commercial traffic off of the road certainly would be another level of, I think really probably the last piece of relief we can offer them, where we've already made those other changes, so.
Okay.
Question?
Yes, ma'am.
Why do the large trucks use Chase's Lane?
To avoid the lights.
That's the only reason, seriously?
I think so. Well, if you're driving a big truck, I think it's probably a really good reason. It can be tough in there.
Yeah, I don't think they should be using, I know Rick was on the council, has nothing to do with Rick being on the council, has to do with the safety and what's right over there, and I just don't think that, you know, after hearing what I hear and see what I see, because I frequent Home Depot quite often, and I think the truck should be used to, should have to use the lights and not Chase's Lane. It's just it's tough enough to make that, when somebody's coming out of the entrance on Chase's Lane, it's tough enough with a vehicle
Yep.
to get in and out of there, never mind a truck. So I have no idea why they're doing that, and they shouldn't be able to do that.
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
I think it was an oversight on the zoning board's part, you know, not having seen the recording or the minutes, not to embrace that suggestion. So I
Yeah.
think that this is kind of coming full circle, and I'm not sure what the path would be to execute that restriction.
Peter?
It would be for the, and I can draft a ordinance for the council's review, similar to what we've done in a couple of other streets, whether
Yeah.
it's Forest Avenue or others. So
And
it's
it-
something that we can take a look at the next docket.
And it's not an anti-business move, it's a safety move. Something that's common sense move. So I think that's important, we do that. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
Was there consideration of them coming off another way in?
No, initially,
We do ordinances.
I was on the council when Home Depot opened. I was off the zoning board by then, but I was on the council when they opened, and they actually, there was talk of bringing them an entrance in through Access Highway. But I wasn't sure if I can't remember if the state didn't want to allow it, or the property owner by the movie theaters there did not want to allow. Because not only do you have the movie theaters, on the other side of it, you have Selbro Trucking. I believe that's your dad, right? Or was your dad, that owned that at the time. So I can't remember all the details of it, but I know there was some resistance for them coming in that way at the time.
Right, because the traffic's heavy at the lights as well. I mean, very heavy. And so trucks making that turn is not going to be the prettiest thing either.
Well, it's better there than.
But no, it's better than being
Yeah.
on Chase, but can we maybe reconsider another entrance for them? I mean, is that something we look into for them, or
I'm not sure.
Home
that-
Depot look into it, or?
Well, and I think the other piece is you have Gate 17. You
Yep.
know, basically, all of the commercial traffic coming out of Naval Station Newport has to go through Gate 17. So that's also, it might not be everybody, but you have that one guy in a commercial truck, and he's gonna, you know, again, sneak through the neighborhood rather than, you know, go to the Access Highway or go out to Green Lane and come back through Burma Road. You know, they're basically, they're trying to get that delivery made as quickly as possible, and
Yeah, and you'd either take it by eminent domain or something crazy, because I don't believe the property owners are gonna, they didn't want to allow it at the time, and
Yeah.
the state didn't even want it, because there was some drainage issues over there too, as well at the
I
time.
was gonna say, there's a drainage easement through the back
Yes,
there.
yes. It's starting to come back to me. All right.
May I?
Yes, Mrs. Santos.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, you brought up commercial vehicles. We have a very bad situation on Aquinic Avenue with Topa's Warehouse.
We need to stick to,
Okay, but
Chase's Lane.
you're talking about commercial trucks?
I understand we're talking about commercial trucks. I don't want to be rude to cut you off, but we want to talk about commercial trucks on Chase's Lane.
Okay, I'm
If you
fine.
want to bring that up, you can bring,
My, one suggestion I'd have, not knowing the answer, is to talk to Mr. Hall. I believe RIDOT and Topas have had some conversations with planning for the project along that roadway. There may be some,
well, I'll tell you what, if you want to talk
accommodations
about it
that have
now, I'll
been made.
talk about it, because I was on the zoning board for that one. And they built the building, and there was supposed to be, delivery was supposed to be on the back. When they built the building, they built it, they knew they weren't going to have enough in the back, and then they had to come back to the town and say there's going to be delivery in the front. So when they did that, the town put a restriction on them before 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning, no deliveries after that, and they do it all the time.
They don't know how to tell time.
So, sorry.
no,
but-
and I,
All right.
Your memory's
Let's, it's all coming back. Okay. So, so you guys are good with moving?
Want to say something?
You guys are good with moving forward with the recommendation of Peter drafting an ordinance for restrictions of trucks on Chase's Lane? Okay, excellent. We don't need a vote for that, correct? We just,
You vote on it when you see it.
just a direction. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor, and thank you, councilors. Let's move forward. So we have motion and a second to receive said memorandum. All in favor? Aye. Okay, number 24, communication of Barbara E. Fenlon, CPA Accounting Manager, in reference to quarterly tax collector's report as of 6/30/2021, Town of Middletown.
Motion to receive said communication and report. Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Mr.
members of the
Finance
council.
Director.
Yes. This report is for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021, and the memo is dated July 23rd. For the fiscal year, the town remained strong with a very strong collection rate of 98.6%. It surpassed the prior 2 years. Part of that was we do send out delinquent notices quarterly right after the due date. The town continued a strong collection rate after the fiscal year, collecting 47% of the outstanding taxes at that time. During the year, we collected on the outstanding prior balances 64% of the taxes and almost 81% of the sewer. We are holding a tax sale on August 4th. There are 6 people on that list last time we checked. So the town does continue to have a very strong collection rate.
Mark, just on the, thank you. Just on the tax sale, I just want to make sure that, you know, we're reaching out to those folks and letting them know their options as far as, you know, if they can't afford to pay their taxes, that there's different rules that are governed by the state of Rhode Island from a tax perspective that say, you know, if you give full disclosure of your financials and your income to the tax assessor, he can make a decision based on what you can afford. He can set your taxes at what you can afford based upon the information he gathers from your financials.
For the exemptions?
Yeah, no, for a tax.
We have done agreements with individuals.
I'm not talking about agreements. I'm talking about George has the authority to go in and say, okay, Paul comes forward and says, hey, I can't afford the $7,000 or $8,000 on my property. I want to live here. I don't want to get out of my house. Here's my financials, George. This is what I can afford. Here's what I make. And George can come back and say, by state law, okay, we're going to charge you this because this is what you can afford. That is a fact. So I just want to make sure that people are aware of that, those 6 people on that tax list, and even people that may be in a situation coming up that, you know, could maybe benefit from that. Because the last thing we want to do is, you know, have people, you know, have to sell their place or, you know, have to get out because they can't afford it, so.
Correct. We don't auction their homes, we sell the tax, yes.
Okay.
We don't kick them out, correct.
Okay.
Question.
Mrs. Santos.
Thank you. Mark, are there any seniors of the 6 people?
There are no seniors. We contact Rhode Island Housing. There is a process. We notify them of any seniors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions about the financials? It's good news. I think that certainly, you know, we're in a pretty strong position right now. Hopefully that continues, and if, you know, we can provide as much customer service and education to our residents and work with them on. And I'm sorry to cut you off earlier because you were bringing up a good point before I was so eloquently cut you off, Mark, about you saying you're working with people agreements where they can, you know, you're working out payment plans for them to be able to pay their taxes. I think that's fantastic. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that, you know, because look at what's going on around us, you know, as far as assessments and property values and taxes, and we need to make sure we're doing our part, okay? And it certainly sounds like we are, so. Are there any further discussion? So I have a motion and a second and thank Barbara for the report as well, to receive said communication. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. Number 25, Memorandum of Finance Director in reference to financial report, 12 months ended June 30th, 2021.
Motion to receive said memorandum and report. Second.
Is there any further discussion on this? Or any discussion on this, I should say? No? Okay. Hey, you're getting off easy tonight, Tangway, you know? So, excellent. Okay. Motion to receive said memorandum and report in the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Wow.
Well, I was right.
Good job tonight, guys. Thank
Oh,
you.
my God.
Motion is second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Good job, guys.
I
Thank
don't
you.
remember.